Right, okay, so I was, as part of my run of Highland whiskies, to finish off Highland, do a bit more, Speyside later on in the challenge, and I've got all my Speysides locked down together in a big chunk on my shelf. And I was, tonight, as number 198, going to do this one, which is a miniature of Glenfarclas, because it says on the label Highland Single Malt, and in a couple of places I've looked Highland Single Malt, but it's a Speyside whiskey, and you know, in a number of places it's saying it's Speyside, and if you look at it on the map it's Speyside. So fine, right, okay, I've already done Knockdo, which says Highland, in 2 websites says it's a Highland, and yet it's slap bang in the middle of excuse me, I've got hiccups, slap bang in the middle of Speyside. So I was like, right, I'm not going to do Glenfarclas. What's the next one on my list of Highlands? There's not many of them, but what's next on my list? Glenglassaugh, whichever way you want to do it. Not Glenglassaugh or org, Glenglassaugh. So again, on the label, now this is a donation from Andrew A.P. Butler. Here he is again. He features a lot during this challenge. So this is a miniature that he sent me. So it's a miniature that he's had some of and then sent me, which a few of them are. And this is what it looks like, and this is what the bottle looks like ordinarily. And on the label it says Highland Single Malt Scotch Whisky. And I looked in Whisky Exchange, I'm sure was the one that I looked at, where it said it's Highland. So I was like, fine, okay, right. Put the Glenfarclas to one side, get the Glenglassaugh out, let's start doing some notes, blah, blah, blah. Where's the distillery? Look on the map. Here's where it is, which is bloody Speyside. Essentially, Speyside is like that shoulder bit. If you turn that into a rectangle, for sake of argument, not quite, but as a rough rule of thumb, if you sort of anything on that shoulder as a rectangle is pretty much Speyside. It's in it. It's in the middle of it. But I've written notes. I've done it now. It's too bloody late. It's the same as Knockdo stroke Anarch. I can't be asked to find another one. I've had a quick look through the remainder of my Highlands, which I think I've got about 6 left, and they are definitely Highlands, he says with no conviction whatsoever. So, Andrew, thank you for the sample. On with the show. So, this is the revival is because it's had quite a checkered history. And Glenglassaugh is a bit of an odd one in that it's never really been almost like a recognisable name. And you'd think with a name like that, that's so bloody long, it would be one that sticks out, you know, like Glenmorangie and things like that. It's just really, really hard to get hold of. So, it was founded in 1875 by a local entrepreneur called James Muir, who owned a grocery store in a town called Portsoy, which is just north, south, east, west of Banff. And it was essentially established as a distillery for him to make whiskey for his grocery store for his customers, which is sort of a bit of a common theme in quite a few Scotch distilleries, and blends as well. Blends seem to be ones where grocery stores buying whiskey to blend their own whiskey to sell it in their shop. So it was near to a springs called Glassaugh, and that was good water source, well known for its purity. Local barley was very good as well, so it was like ideal place for a distillery. Now, Muir died in 1892, and he founded it with 2 of his nephews, one of which had died around the same time. So the remaining nephew, whose name completely forgets me, Andrew Morrison, I think it was, he ended up selling it to a company called Highland Distillers. Now, Highland Distillers owned the distillery until 2008, where in amongst that time, they then became part of the Edrington Group. Now, the Edrington Group owned Famous Grouse and Cutty Sark and Lang Supreme, amongst others. And Glenglassaugh, for a long time, was a key part of those 3 brands. So it was part of Grouse, it was part of Cutty Sark as well. Now, in that time, it closed between 1907 and 1931. It also closed between 1936 and 1960. So it wasn't like they were operating it continually. And it's been on and off and on and off. And it was eventually mothballed in 1986. Even though Highland Distillers still owned it, they were like, we can't do anything with this, we've had enough of this place, it's just driving us nuts. The license to distill was actually returned in 1992, and it was pretty much assumed, well, it's not happening, you know, this distillery is long gone. And then all of a sudden, in 2008, this company called the Scaient Group, I think it's Scaient, it's Scaent, we'll call it Scaient Group. Now, I've read in one place that they were an energy company, I've read in another place that they actually were a private company that bought a guy called Graham Unson in, who used to work at Glenmorangie. One way or the other, they basically took over the distillery, and although it had been mothballed in 1986, there was still lots of stock around, so they were then started selling. Thought it was a spider, it's just a fly, that's all right, I hate spiders. They then started selling old bottlings of Glenglassaugh because they bought the distillery and the remaining stock. So they started distilling themselves, started a reproduction, and obviously it was 2011 because you've got to mature it for 3 years minimally to be able to sell it as Scotch whisky. They couldn't release anything in 2011. What they were doing was they were releasing, I suppose you could call it new make. It was essentially Scotch whisky without the maturation. So they called it The Spirit That Dare Not Speak Its Name. Now would have this been before Harry Potter? Maybe around the same time. So it might have been that they were kind of tying in with Harry Potter. But anyway, that was what it was called, The Spirit That Dare Not Speak Its Name. And it was essentially like new make, or sort of new make with some maturation, you know, like 1 year old or 2 year old. Never come across it, never seen it, no idea what it's like. And then in 2013, the distillery was then bought by, they're called the Benriach Distillery, but it's a guy called Billy Walker with a conglomerate, who's essentially a private individual with financial backing, who bought the Benriach Distillery. They also bought, what else have they got? Dram A, and then bought this in 2013. Now the revival, I don't know whether, and I think it was originally before, it was pre-Benriach, because the revival was, this is our new version, this is the new Glenglassaugh. So it's non-age statement because it's going to be minimum from 2008. Obviously, you know, it's not even a 10-year-old yet. So it's a non-age statement. This is going to be pretty young stuff. Again, matured in, who knows? It doesn't say anything on this label because it's just a miniature. 46%, you're looking at about, well, Whisky Exchange is selling this for 35 quid, 34.95. So a bit like the Glencadam, 30 to 35 quid, that sort of price range. So this is, I'm going to say obscure even though it's not, because it's not like it's expensive. It's just there's never been any demand for it. And it used to be quite rare, but you know, they're making a fist of, okay, we're going to revitalise it, we're going to reopen it, we're going to start making whiskey again and see if we can actually do something with this. So, whereas the Glencadam was very pale for a 10-year-old, this is considerably darker for a non-age statement. Maximally, at a maximum 8-year-old that's in that bottle, and I'm willing to bet not, probably about 5. And this is let's see if we can actually pick up the two. I know he's put quite a big label on it. See if I can get the angle right so you can actually see it. And then that doesn't help about that label, but maybe if I turn it upside down, you might be able to see it there. There we go. That might give you an idea. So you see how pale that is, and that's a 10-year-old. And then this is a non-age statement. I think it's safe to say that's got colouring added to it. I'd be bloody amazed if it hasn't, because that's really, really dark compared to that. And having had a nose of it, it's a smell that I associate with predominantly cheap whiskey, and I really don't want to, I've not even put this in my mouth yet, sounds a bit dodgy, but I've not had this in my mouth to taste it. That sounds dodgy as well. There's no particular way I can say this without it sounding dodgy, but I haven't yet tasted this, and yet I already have a preconception of what it tastes like by doing that, because it has this, and I always call it an artificial plastic aroma to it. It's a slightly burnt plastic. It just screams artificiality to me, and it's something that I always associate with cheap whiskey, or whiskey that's not made particularly well. And it's something that over the years I've come to associate with colouring more than anything else. Now, Joe Ellis, who does Whiskey Wednesday, fantastic set of, I'm assuming that pretty much everybody that's watching this is probably watching his videos, because I think the majority of you people that are watching this have come from his. But he did I think it was on one of his Highland Park tastings, where he did he got some E150A colouring and he put it into water and just put a few drops in and shook it out and went, look, this is what it does to it. What he didn't do, unfortunately, and I don't think he's done yet, even though I've asked him to, was try the water to see whether it affected the flavour, and also smell it. Now I want to try and get some E150 if I can from somewhere, and try it myself, and just put it in water, because I always associate this slightly harsh, slightly artificial nose and aroma with colouring, and I don't know if that is that is causing it. It might be something completely different, but there is a nose on this that's just rough and just not pleasant at all. I'll be honest, it's not great. There's a really cloying, again, fake sweetness to it. It's like cheap kid sweets. It's the equivalent of, if it was a chocolate, it would be that god-awful Kinnerton shit that you get in chocolate advent calendars for 50p at Home Bargains. It's got quite a woody bite to it as well, and it's not a pleasant woodiness. Oh, there's very, very little positive I can say about this, unfortunately. It just does not work for me. It's got a roughness to it as well. It's really rough, it's really unbalanced. There's no smoothness to it, there's no depth to it. It dies off fairly quickly, and what's lingering is this overriding chewing on the end of a pencil, chewing on a bit of cask that's not even a great bit of cask that's been sat out in the sun for too long. Oh dear. That's not great. That's not great at all. And unfortunately, there's nothing in there that makes me want to say, I wonder what it's going to be like when it's a 10-year-old, when it's a 15-year-old, because there's something in there that might open up over 5 years maturation in cask. There's nothing in there. This really does taste like what I would imagine a supermarket own label type whiskey would be. And the trouble is, as I'm bringing it in to take a drink of it, I'm getting a whiff of, and it's kind of like cheap brandy, cheap rum, cheap whiskey. I'm fighting it. It's, oh God. It's fizzy, but it's not a pleasant fizziness. It's drying, but whereas the Glencairn, I was explaining, has a dryness, but actually was quite a mouth-watering dryness. It was a very pleasant dryness, a bit like a dry white wine. Dries your mouth, but actually leaves it feeling juicy. This just sucks all the water out and leaves you with a slightly damp, wet wood sensation in your mouth. And there's this cloying, sickly, plasticky, melted plastic, cheap sweets. Oh. The only thing I can think of is that obviously this was an opened miniature from Andrew, and he's done one of two things. It's been open and it's been sat there for about 5 years, and everything that was in there has evaporated out, and all that's left is just this kind of like mass of dead flavour. Or, well, he's done one of three things. One of three things has happened. That's the first one. The second one is that he's drunk the whole thing and he's poured in half a miniature's worth of some god-awful whiskey that he's trying to get rid of because he doesn't want to drink it himself. But I don't think he's that sort of person. The third thing is it's just that bloody bad. Yeah, can I have some of that water? Because I'm going to need it. That's not a good whiskey. That's not a good Scotch whiskey. That's not a good whiskey, full stop. Andrew, I'm pretty certain you'll be watching this. Can you tell me what you thought of it? Because I just, for the sake of them, to give them half a chance, it's not supposed to taste like that, and something's happened to this between you having it and opening it and it coming to me. Because that is, yes, one of the worst Scotch whiskies I've ever had. Easy up there. Top 5 worst Scotch whiskies I've ever had. Certainly single malts, almost definitely single malts. In fact, top 3 worst single malts I've ever had. Dram A is up there. But that, oh dear. Oh dear. No, that's not good. So yeah, Revival. Probably should have left it dead and buried, to be perfectly honest. Shouldn't mess with nature. I've seen too many zombie movies. Don't try and bring things back from the dead. It doesn't work. It was probably gotten rid of for a reason. I mean, Christ, it was shut longer than it was bloody open. Can you not see why? Right. Okay, well, that's me done. I shall see you at the next one. Cheers.